Our company outing was on Friday. I filed leave before and after to skip it. My boss warned HR will destroy you and your career for this. I did it anyway. Days later, HR called me in. I was sweating, ready to be fired. But I was shocked when they thanked me instead. Turned out, the leave request form was still warm from the printer when I walked it over to Gary's desk. He was on the phone, doing that thing where he leans back in his chair and laughs too loud at something that isn't funny, performing for whoever was on the other end. I set the paper down square in front of his keyboard and waited. He glanced at it, kept laughing, held up one finger, the universal sign for I'm more important than you right now. I didn't move. When he finally hung up, he picked up the form like it was a parking ticket stuck to his windshield. His eyes scanned it, then scanned it again. Thursday and Monday, he said. That's right. The outing is Friday. I know. Gary set the form down and folded his hands together, fingers interlocking, the way he always did right before he started a sentence with "here's the thing." He didn't disappoint. Here's the thing, Marcus. This outing has been on the calendar for 3 months. Dale from corporate is coming down. There's a whole team building component. Attendance is, well, it's expected. I have leave days available. I'm using them. You're sandwiching the outing. I'm taking Thursday and Monday off. What happens on Friday is the company's business. He stared at me like I just told him I was quitting to become a beekeeper. Not angry yet. Just confused. Like the possibility of someone not wanting to spend 9 hours at a ropes course with their coworkers was a concept that didn't fit anywhere in his brain. I'd been at Rowan & Strauss for 4 years, accounting. Quiet work, good work, the kind of job where you come in, do it right, and go home. I didn't hate anyone. I didn't have feuds. I just had a very clear line between my professional life and whatever performance Gary thought culture was. The last outing had involved a scavenger hunt at a state park where they split us into teams and one of the VPs made everyone do a trust fall off a picnic table. I'd pulled a muscle in my back and spent the weekend on a heating pad watching property renovation shows. This year's was a full-day affair at some kind of outdoor adventure complex, zip lines, rock walls, kayaking, the whole catalog of forced enthusiasm. I'd rather have dental surgery. And since I had 12 unused leave days sitting in the system, I figured I'd make it a 4-day weekend. Thursday off. Monday off. Friday would just happen to fall in the dead zone between them. It wasn't a complicated plan. I wasn't trying to stage a rebellion. I just didn't want to go, and the employee handbook said nothing, absolutely nothing, about mandatory attendance at optional company events. I checked, twice. Gary picked up the form again. I'm going to be honest with you, Marcus. This doesn't look good. It looks like a leave request. It looks like avoidance. I'm not avoiding anything. I'm using my earned time off. The form is filled out correctly. My workload is covered through Tuesday. He leaned forward. His chair creaked. Gary was one of those middle managers who believed proximity was authority, that if he got close enough and lowered his voice enough, he could will you into compliance. I'd seen it work on the newer analysts. It wasn't going to work on me. Let me put it to you differently, he said. If you file this, HR will notice. They notice everything. And they will destroy you and your career for this. That's not a threat, that's just how it works around here. You skip a company-wide event by gaming the leave system, and you go on a list. A very short list. The kind nobody wants to be on. I let the silence hang for exactly 1 beat. The form is filled out. I need your signature or your documented refusal. His jaw tightened. For a second I thought he might actually refuse, which would have been interesting, because a documented refusal of approved leave with no stated business justification would have been a much bigger headache for him than for me. But Gary wasn't stupid. He was just petty. He grabbed his pen, signed the form hard enough to dent the desk pad underneath, and slid it back to me. Your funeral, he said. I picked up the form, thanked him, and walked it down to HR myself. Rhonda at the front desk took it, stamped it, entered it into the system, and handed me a confirmation copy without a single question. The whole process took 4 minutes. Thursday came. I turned off my alarm the night before and slept until 9. Not the kind of sleep where you're half aware of the time passing and your body is just waiting for the alarm that isn't going to ring. Real sleep. The kind where you open your eyes and the light in the room has changed color and you have no idea what hour it is and you don't care. I made eggs. The slow way, low heat, butter, constant stirring until they were just barely set. Ate them standing at the counter because I felt like it. Read the news on my phone. Took a long walk around the park near my apartment and sat on a bench for 20 minutes doing absolutely nothing. No emails. No Slack notifications. No Gary leaning around a doorframe asking if I'd had a chance to look at something I'd already finished 2 days ago. Just trees and quiet and the distant sound of someone's dog barking at a squirrel. It was spectacular. Friday, the day of the outing, I went to a matinee. Some thriller I'd been meaning to see for weeks. The theater was nearly empty. I sat dead center, fifth row from the back, and ate popcorn without worrying about getting butter on a keyboard. The movie was decent. Not great. Didn't matter. The act of sitting in a dark room at 1 in the afternoon on a workday, by choice, with nobody expecting me anywhere, that was the real entertainment. Left the theater around 3. The sun was out. I got a coffee from the place on 11th that does the oat milk right and walked home slowly, taking the long route past the bookstore and the little park with the bronze statue of a dog that nobody knows the story behind. Sat on my couch with the coffee and thought about nothing work-related for the first time in months. The whole day cost me $12 and a movie ticket, and I regretted none of it. At some point during the afternoon my phone buzzed. A text from Kevin, a photo of the outdoor adventure complex, a sea of brightly colored harnesses and ropes and people in company polo shirts milling around with the particular expression of adults who've been told to have fun. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The photo was its own commentary. Saturday and Sunday passed the way good weekends pass, without structure, without obligation, without the creeping Sunday evening dread that usually starts around 4 o'clock. I read a book. I went to the hardware store and bought a shelf bracket I'd been meaning to get for 3 months. I installed it. It was crooked. I didn't care. Monday I cleaned my apartment, reorganized my closet, and cooked a pot roast. Not because I had to. Because I could. Spent the afternoon on the couch with the windows open, listening to the street noise and smelling rosemary from the kitchen. 4 days to myself. No zip lines. No trust falls. No forced laughter. No pretending to enjoy a kayak while Gary shouted motivational platitudes from the shore like a life coach who'd been bitten by a middle manager. Tuesday morning I came back to the office like nothing had happened. Hung up my jacket on the hook behind my chair. Logged in. Waited for the screen to load while the coffee maker in the break room gurgled its usual death rattle. Checked my emails. There were 87 of them, which was about average for a long weekend, and none of them mentioned the outing, my absence, or anything that suggested the sky was falling. Most of them were the usual chain of reply-alls that should have been one email: scheduling conflicts, printer jams on the 3rd floor, someone asking if anyone had left a blue water bottle in the conference room. Normal. Relentlessly, beautifully normal. I started working through them one by one. Around 10, Kevin from the cubicle next to mine leaned over the partition. Kevin was a decent guy, quiet. Mid-30s, receding hairline he didn't try to hide. Always had a pen behind his ear even though nobody used pens anymore. We had an unspoken agreement where we didn't bother each other unless something was actively on fire. "How was your weekend?" he asked. Casual, but there was something behind it, a slight hesitation, like someone testing the temperature of water before stepping in. "Good, quiet, yours?" Friday was. He trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck. It was something. The outing? Yeah. He didn't elaborate. But his expression said everything. That kind of haunted blankness people get after they've been through something exhausting and are still processing whether it was acceptable. Like he'd witnessed a minor catastrophe and wasn't sure yet whether he was allowed to call it one. I didn't press. He went back to his screen. I went back to mine. The morning passed without incident. Gary walked by my desk twice. The first time he didn't look at me. Eyes forward, jaw set, walking with that particular speed that says I'm going somewhere important even when you're just going to the bathroom. The second time he did look, a quick, sideways glance, like he was checking to see if I'd spontaneously combusted, and then kept walking. No comment. No smug follow-up. No told you so. That was unusual. Gary loved follow-ups. He loved being right almost as much as he loved trust falls. The fact that he was passing my desk in silence felt less like restraint and more like something heavy sitting on his chest. By Wednesday I'd mostly forgotten the whole thing. My work was clean, my reports were on time, and there was a pleasant, uninterrupted rhythm to the week that I hadn't felt in a long time. The quarterly numbers were starting to shape up, and I'd found a formula error in one of the older templates that had been slightly overstating depreciation for 2 cycles, not enough to flag an audit, but enough to bother me. I fixed it. Filed the correction. Moved on. I was actually in a good mood. Then my phone rang. Internal line. The display said HR, Paulson. Janet Paulson. Head of Human Resources. Not the assistant. Not the coordinator. The head. I picked up. "Marcus, do you have a few minutes this afternoon? I'd like you to come up to my office." Her voice was neutral. Not warm, not cold. Professional, in the way that HR people are professional when they're about to either promote you or fire you and don't want to tip the hand either way. "Sure. What time works?" "How about 2:30? I'll be there." She thanked me and hung up. The call lasted maybe 30 seconds. It sat in my stomach like a brick for the next 4 hours. I tried to work. Couldn't focus. Kept rereading the same spreadsheet column and forgetting what I was looking for. My brain started running scenarios. Gary had said HR would destroy me. Was this it? Was this the list he was talking about? Was Janet Paulson going to sit me down in that glass-walled office of hers and tell me that sandwiching a company outing with leave days was somehow a fireable offense? I pulled up the employee handbook on my computer. Searched for mandatory. Searched for outing. Searched for company events, nothing. The outing wasn't classified as mandatory. My leave had been filed through proper channels, approved, stamped, documented. There was no policy I'd violated. I was certain of that. But certainty doesn't mean much when the head of HR calls you by name and asks you to come to her office at a specific time. That's the kind of thing that overrides logic. You stop being a rational person with documented leave and start being a kid who got called to the principal's office and can't remember what he did wrong. By 2 o'clock I'd given up pretending to work. I organized my desk. Straightened my files. Aligned the pens in the cup even though I never used them. Checked that my leave form confirmation was still in my email, it was. I even printed a copy. Folded it twice and put it in my jacket pocket. If they were going to come for me, I was going to have receipts. I went to the bathroom. Washed my hands. Looked at myself in the mirror under the fluorescent lights that made everyone look like they were recovering from something. My face was calm. My brain was not. The thing about HR meetings is that they exist in their own category of dread. It's not the same as being called into your boss's office. That's just a conversation with someone who has slightly more power than you. An HR meeting is institutional. It's the company itself deciding to have a word with you. And when the head of HR calls you personally, not through an assistant, not through email, but directly on your phone, you start mentally auditing every decision you've ever made in the building. Did I CC the wrong person? Did I forget to sign something? Did I accidentally expense a personal lunch 3 months ago and not catch it? None of that applied. I knew it didn't apply. I was clean. My leave was clean. But knowledge and feeling are two entirely different systems, and right now the feeling was winning by a wide margin. At 2:25 I stood up, put on my jacket, not because I needed it, but because I wanted the extra layer of composure that comes from looking put together when you feel like you're about to be disassembled, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. HR territory. Carpeted hallways. Framed mission statements on the walls, printed in that particular font that companies use when they want values to look expensive. That quiet. That particular brand of corporate silence that always made me feel like I was inside a church where the religion was liability mitigation. The elevator doors had opened onto this floor maybe 3 times in my 4 years. Once for new hire orientation. Once for a benefits enrollment question. And now this. Each time the carpet felt thicker than it should, like the building was trying to absorb sound before it could become evidence. Janet's assistant, a young guy with a neat beard and a lanyard, waved me in without looking up from his screen. "She's ready for you." I walked into the office expecting the worst. My palms were sweating. I could feel my pulse in my temples. I had the printed leave confirmation folded in my jacket pocket like a shield. Janet was behind her desk. Glasses on. A folder open in front of her. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment I tried to read her expression the way you read a jury, neutral, measured. Nothing I could decipher. "Marcus. Thanks for coming up. Please, sit down." I sat. The chair was one of those ergonomic things that feels like it's evaluating you. I kept my hands on my knees. She closed the folder, folded her hands on top of it, and looked at me. "I wanted to talk to you about last Friday." Here it comes. I could feel the adrenaline pooling in my chest. My fingers pressed into my kneecaps. "I understand you took Thursday and Monday off as leave, which meant you weren't present for the company outing." "That's correct." "Your leave was filed and approved in advance." "Yes. Through proper channels." She nodded, paused. And then she said something I was not remotely prepared for. "I want to thank you." I blinked. Whatever script I'd been running in my head, the defense, the policy citations, the barely concealed indignation, all of it hit a wall and fell over. "I'm sorry?" "I want to thank you, Marcus. And I want to explain why, because I think you deserve to know what your absence actually triggered." She opened the folder again and pulled out a few sheets of paper. I recognized some of them: internal forms, a printed email chain, what looked like an incident report. "The company outing on Friday," she began, "did not go well." She said it the way a doctor says we found something: calm, careful, and loaded with things she wasn't saying yet. I won't get into every detail, but here's what I can share with you. There were multiple incidents. An employee, someone in your department, actually, was injured on the rock climbing wall. The harness system hadn't been properly inspected by the venue. We're still sorting out the liability on that. She's okay, but she needed medical attention on-site and wasn't able to return to work until this week. She turned a page in the folder. 2 people had allergic reactions to food provided by the catering company. One of them severe enough that an EpiPen was used. The catering company was not on our approved vendor list. Gary selected them on his own. Apparently, a friend of a friend ran the operation, gave him a discount. He didn't submit the vendor for review, didn't provide an allergen menu to attendees in advance, and didn't inform anyone in operations or risk management that he'd gone outside the system. Another page. There was an altercation between two team leads during the kayaking portion. It started as a disagreement about team assignments and escalated to the point where venue security had to physically separate them. Witnesses say alcohol was involved. There was apparently a cooler that someone brought without authorization. That detail is also being investigated. She paused. And Dale Kessler from corporate witnessed all of it. Every single incident. He was there as an observer from the executive team, and his report went to the C-suite Monday morning. It was thorough and not favorable. I've been in this role for 11 years, Marcus. I've never seen a post-event report use the phrase categorical failure of oversight before. Dale used it twice. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I was trying to process the fact that the outing I had specifically avoided had apparently turned into a small-scale disaster. Now, Janet continued, leaning back slightly, in the aftermath of all this, Gary did something that brought your name to my attention. He sent an email, which he CC'd to Dale and to our department director, in which he identified you by name as a problem employee who had gamed the leave system to avoid a mandatory team event. He described your absence as, and I'm quoting here, a deliberate act of insubordination that reflects a fundamental lack of commitment to the team. She adjusted her glasses. That email landed on my desk Monday afternoon. And it concerned me. Not because of what it said about you, but because of what it said about Gary. I sat there, still, quiet. The sweat on my palms had cooled, but my heart was still going. The first thing I did was pull your leave records. Everything was clean. Filed correctly, approved. No policy violations. The outing is not classified as mandatory, it never has been, despite what some managers apparently tell their teams. You exercised your right to use accrued leave, and you did it by the book. She pulled out another sheet. The second thing I did was start reviewing Gary's email more carefully. The language he used, destroy your career, put you on a list, those phrases came up in a follow-up conversation I had with him yesterday. He confirmed he'd said those things to you verbally before you filed your leave. She looked at me directly. Marcus, threatening an employee with career retaliation for using approved leave is a serious violation of our workplace conduct policy. It doesn't matter if the outing was on the calendar. It doesn't matter if attendance was expected. If leave is available and approved, no manager has the right to threaten consequences for taking it. I realized I hadn't exhaled in about 40 seconds. I did. So what happens now? I asked. A few things. First, and this is why I wanted to thank you, your situation exposed a pattern. After Gary's email went out, 3 other employees in your department came forward. They told us they'd also wanted to skip the outing but felt pressured not to file leave because Gary had made similar threats to them. One of them has a documented medical condition that made the outdoor activities genuinely risky, and she attended anyway because she was afraid of retaliation. Janet's expression shifted. Just slightly. The professional mask cracked for half a second into something that looked like genuine frustration. That's not acceptable. And it wouldn't have come to light if you hadn't filed your leave anyway and forced Gary to put his behavior in writing. She closed the folder. Gary is being placed on a formal performance improvement plan effective immediately. His vendor selection for the outing is being investigated separately, because the catering issue and the equipment issue both trace back to decisions he made without proper oversight. Dale Kessler's report has already resulted in a policy review at the corporate level regarding how outings are organized and whether attendance can be implicitly mandated through managerial pressure. She stood up. I took it as a signal and stood too. I also want to be clear about one more thing, she said. Your file is clean. There is no list. There never was a list. That was fabricated pressure. Plain and simple. And if anyone, Gary or otherwise, ever suggests to you that using your approved leave will result in career consequences, I want you to come directly to me. Not your supervisor. Not a colleague, me, personally. That's not how we operate, and I intend to make sure everyone in this building understands that. She extended her hand. I shook it. Her grip was firm, brief, professional, the kind of handshake that closes a chapter rather than opens one. Thank you for your time, Marcus. And again, thank you for filing that leave request. I know you didn't do it for anyone else's benefit. But the result is that several people in your department are now protected who weren't before. That matters. Thank you for telling me, I said. And I meant it. Not because of the vindication, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel like oxygen, but because she'd treated me like an adult. No games. No corporate doublespeak. Just a clear sequence of facts and a clear statement of what was going to happen next. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in that building in 4 years. I walked out of her office, down the carpeted hallway, past the framed mission statements, and into the elevator. The doors closed. I was alone. The fluorescent strip on the ceiling buzzed the way it always did, that low, electrical hum that you only notice when everything else is quiet. I leaned against the back wall and let out a breath that felt like it had been stuck somewhere behind my ribs since the moment my phone rang that morning. My hands were steady now. The folded leave confirmation was still in my jacket pocket. I hadn't needed it. The system had already done the work. The elevator dropped to the second floor. The doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped out into the regular noise of the office, keyboards, muffled conversations, the hum of the HVAC system doing its endless, thankless job, and walked back to my desk. Gary's office was dark. Door closed. Not locked, just closed, the way you close a door when you don't plan on coming back for a while. His jacket was gone from the hook behind it. The whiteboard inside, usually covered with his color-coded project timelines and motivational quotes he'd stolen from LinkedIn, was blank. Wiped clean. I didn't know where he was, and I didn't care. That wasn't my business. My business was the spreadsheet sitting open on my screen, the quarterly close coming up in 2 weeks, and the formula error I still needed to document. Kevin leaned over the partition again. He'd clearly noticed me leave for the 4th floor, the kind of thing that's hard to miss in an open office, especially when the person leaving has the expression of someone walking toward a firing squad. "Everything good?" he asked. Cautious, like he wasn't sure if he should be offering condolences or congratulations. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's fine." He studied me for a second. Whatever he saw must have been convincing, because he gave me a small nod and went back to his screen. No follow-up questions. No gossip fishing. Just the nod. That's why I liked Kevin. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been staring at all morning. The numbers made sense now. The columns lined up. The formulas did what they were supposed to do. Something about the conversation with Janet had cleared a fog I hadn't fully realized was there, the low-grade anxiety of waiting for a punishment that never should have been on the table in the first place. I worked through the rest of the afternoon without interruption. Clean, focused work. The kind I'd signed up for when I took this job. Around 4:30, an all-staff email came through from Janet Paulson's office. Subject line, updated policy, company events and leave usage. I opened it. The email was 3 paragraphs long, formal, and direct. It clarified that all company social events, including outings, holiday gatherings, and team-building activities, were voluntary. That approved leave could not be questioned, penalized, or used as a factor in any performance evaluation by any manager at any level. That any employee who felt pressured or threatened regarding event attendance should contact HR directly and confidentially, with an assurance that all reports would be investigated without retaliation. There was no mention of Gary by name. There didn't need to be. Everyone who'd been at the outing, who'd watched the rock wall injury, who'd seen the EpiPen come out, who'd heard security break up the fight while Dale Kessler stood off to the side with his phone out taking notes, they knew who it was about. And everyone who hadn't been at the outing, which, as it turned out, was just me, could piece it together without much effort. A few people around the office read the email and exchanged glances. Nobody said anything out loud. That's how it works in offices. The real information moves through looks, pauses, and the particular silence that fills a room when everyone is thinking the same thing and nobody wants to be the first to say it. I read the email once, closed it, and went back to work. The following Monday, a new name appeared on the department org chart. Temporary acting supervisor. A woman named Claire Matsuda from the operations side, brought in while Gary's situation was being resolved, a word HR uses when the resolution has already been decided but the paperwork hasn't caught up yet. Everyone knew what resolved meant. It meant Gary was gone. The temporary was just a grace period for the org chart to catch up with reality. Claire introduced herself to the team in a brief morning meeting. She was calm, organized, and had the particular energy of someone who had no interest in team-building exercises involving picnic tables or trust falls or anything that required a waiver. She asked about our workloads. She confirmed deadlines. She asked if anyone had concerns, real concerns, not the performative kind that gets raised in meetings to fill silence, and when nobody did, she dismissed us in under 10 minutes. I liked her immediately. Not in the way you like someone because they're charming. In the way you like someone because they treat the job like a job and don't try to make it a personality. Gary's desk stayed empty. His nameplate was removed sometime that week, I didn't notice when, exactly, just that one morning the little brass rectangle was gone and the 2 small holes in the cubicle wall were the only proof it had been there at all. His coffee mug, a black one with BOS mode printed on it in white block letters, disappeared from the break room. His parking spot was reassigned. These things happened quietly, incrementally, the way a building absorbs renovations. Nobody asked about it. Nobody brought up the outing. It was as if the entire department had collectively agreed to move on without discussion, The way you stop talking about a car accident once the road has been repaved and the glass has been swept. 2 weeks later, Kevin leaned over the partition one more time. Hey, you hear anything about the summer outing? There's a summer outing? Apparently. Claire's organizing it. She sent a survey asking what people actually want to do. What are the options? Lunch at a restaurant downtown. That's it. Just lunch. No harnesses, no kayaks, no icebreaker games. Just food and conversation at a normal establishment with indoor seating and a menu you can read in advance. I looked at him. He looked at me. A beat passed. I might actually go to that one, I said. Kevin nodded slowly, like we just negotiated a treaty. Yeah. Me too. I turned back to my screen. The spreadsheet was waiting. The numbers were clean. The office was quiet in the way offices should be. People doing their work. Systems working as designed. Nobody standing on a picnic table asking you to fall backward into the arms of a coworker you barely know. And somewhere in a folder on the 4th floor, filed neatly between policy documents and incident reports, a leave request, properly submitted, properly approved, properly stamped, 4 minutes at the front desk, had done more damage to one man's career than any zipline ever could. I didn't file it to make a point. I didn't file it to start a chain reaction. I didn't file it to expose anyone or reform anything or trigger a corporate reckoning. I filed it because I had the days, I had the right, and I had absolutely no interest in pretending otherwise. That it dismantled a petty tyrant's little kingdom in the process, the threats, the fake lists, the unauthorized vendors, the whole culture of fear dressed up as team spirit, was just a bonus. But I won't pretend it wasn't a satisfying one.